The grid view is optimal for displaying images in it, and in this case we want to display a grid view in the horizontal direction, and I will also show you how you can jump between your items. So we have here two buttons, and if you click them you can jump between them, and also if you jump into the other direction then you can jump back between all of your items. We start here with the widget, and I have placed here already all the images inside which we need. And by the way, if you later want to get the source code, you don't need to type all the images by your own. You get it with the first link in the description, and you also get my Flutter course where I teach you how to become super efficient with the second link in the description. And we want to get started right now to build the grid view. So here inside of this method I create first of all the grid view, and inside I put a grid delegate. And first of all what we need to define here are the columns. So I have set here it to 2 columns, and these are basically the rows which you see here. We have one row and another row, and they are not columns anymore because we change later the axis, and therefore they are looking like rows, but in reality they are columns. And now we go here further and add some aspect ratio, and here we put 2 divided by 1 inside, or you can also put 2 directly inside. And what this means is that our image is 2 times larger in height than in width. And you can also play around with the child aspect ratio if you want to change the dimension. And then we also want to add some spacing. And this is basically the spacing between our widgets here. So we have here some spacing and also here. And I want to use the same spacing for both. Therefore I create here a new variable and I put it to 8 spacing. So that's like 8 pixels between. Then we also want to add the scroll direction to horizontal because we want to scroll horizontally and not vertically. And then I also add here some padding, and this is basically the padding here which we have around. So we have here some space to the left, top, and to the right and to the bottom. And we set here this padding to 16. And then we also need to define here this item count and the item builder. So we define here how many items we want to show, and we want to show all our images, so images.length. And then we have here this item builder where we get our item every time, and then we want to build this item. So I create here this build image, and now we want to create here this individual image. And you see that we simply show the image and some border around, and that's what we want to build here. So I create this method, and here inside we get the URL of the image, and it's basically one of these URLs of this list. And now we want to display this image. Therefore I call here image.network and put the URL inside, and now the image is displayed. And now if I hot restart, then you see already we have here this 2 columns or 2 rows, and then you have the URL every time you're inside, and we also can scroll horizontally. Now I want to change also the look and feel of this image, so I wrap this image around a clip rect, and with this one we can make the image rounded. So here inside we put a border radius inside, and here we make it circular, and I set it to 32, and now you see that the image gets rounded. And I also want to add the border around, so we also place here a container around, and inside of it we put some color and some padding, and then we have here this border around. But this looks not really great because here on the corners it is not really rounded, and therefore we also want to put here again a clip rect around, and we put here again the border radius to this rounded value. And now it looks like this, so we have every time the border around our image. And if you want to change the dimensions, you can every time do it. So you can also place here, for example, the child aspect ratio to 3 divided by 1, and then it looks different. Or you can put like 1 by 1, then it looks like this. So you can play around with this aspect ratio if you want to change the design a bit. I will go back to 2 divided by 1 or 2. And now we want to integrate the scrolling behavior. So like I showed you in the beginning, we have here every time the scrolling. If we press here on this button, and then it scrolls to the next item every time. And we also can scroll back through the list with this button. And to get started with the scrolling, we first of all create here the property item. and this is basically the count to which item we are currently scrolled. So in the beginning it is 0, and if we for example go here to the left, then it's 1, and if we go here it's 2, and so on. And then we also want to add here a new item count, because here we have every time 2 images in a column, kind of, and therefore we want to take our images length and divide it by this cross-axis count, which is our column. So we have 2 columns, and then this is our new image count. And now with this prerequisite we can get started. So inside of our app bar we want to add these both buttons first. So one button is this arrow back, this left arrow, and here we want to add the on pressed, so the functionality, what should happen. And basically we want every time to override this item count, and here we basically check if the item count gets lower than 0, then we don't want to go lower than 0, so we keep the item count, and otherwise we every time go -1. And then we want to jump to this new item position which we have defined later, and therefore we create here a new method, and we will also later implement this method to jump to the right item. Alright, but let's first of all build also the second button. So we add here this right button, and then we add here this onPressed handler, and we want to add here the functionality that we every time go into the other position. So we override here again this item count, and this time we put here that the item count should not extend the max length of our images which we have here in the list, and therefore we use the new image count because this is our max length then. And otherwise, if it's not extending this max length, then we want to increment the item count. And then we simply call again the jump to item, and here we put this item count inside so that we later jump to this position. Alright, that's already a lot what we have accomplished here, and now we have here these both buttons. And actually to make the jump between the items we need a scroll controller, and therefore I add here a controller at the top of our state, and then we need to go to our grid view and put here also our controller inside, and then the controller is wired up and we can use this controller to jump between the items. And here inside of our jump to item method we want now to jump to the specific item, and therefore we call here this controller jump to, and now we can define here the pixels to which we want to jump. And now we first of all need to define here the width, and this is the controller max scroll extent, and this is then the whole width, but it's not everything. We also need to add the last width of our screen, so we also add here the context size width, and this is basically the width from here to here. So the total width of everything is the width from here to here plus the max scroll extent. And now we can use this value here, this width. So this is the width from here to the beginning of our list. And this width we can now use to jump to the right location. So basically what we will do here is we will define here this value based on our width. And now we place here the item count divided by our total item count. And then we simply jump with this to the right image. And I can try it right now out with you. And it will not work directly, but I will show you quickly why. So if I click here right now on this, then you see it's not really going correct to the right image because there's some space more on the left. It's already really good, but not really good. And this is because we have here this padding set and the spacing. And if we set it both to 0, then everything should be much better. So let's see. So you see every time it's going here to the right item. And you also see here on the left side that we have the jump every time correct. And for this padding and spacing, our calculation becomes a bit more complicated. Therefore, I put this here right now again inside. And now this simple calculation gets a little bit more complicated. But this is basically the basic calculation, and now comes the complex one. So here to our whole width of the whole list view, we want to subtract the spacing. So we put here first of all minus padding multiplied 2, and we also add the spacing. And with this one, it is then going to the right item, also if we put some spacing and padding inside. And now we create here this value space, and this value space we want to put here inside into our jump method. And now we have integrated all the space into our calculation, and we can now jump here between all the items back and forth. And one problem we have, if we reach here the end of our list, like here, then if I go here, you see, okay, there's some crazy jump, and this is because we are going here over the scroll extent, and that's what we want to change. So what we do here is that we check that we are not going over the scroll extent. So here I put this value space and I check if this is greater than the max scroll extent. And if that's the case, then we want to simply scroll maximum to the max scroll extent, and otherwise we take the value space. And this only makes sure that we have not at the end this crazy jumping. And now we simply put this new value here inside, and we are done with this whole method, and I can hot restart. And now we are finished, so every time we can go here right and it's going to the next value, and we also can go left and it's going back. And I think this is pretty cool. And one thing you need to remember is that every time I press here on right, that this counter stays now at this position. And if I now scroll to another location, then this counter is obviously right now not changing, and he will always stay here at this position. And now if I go here to the left side, then he will go to the previous image, not from the scroll position, but from our counter every time. Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. Please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel here to get the latest news about Flutter, and see you soon. Bye!